Why do some websites look cheap? Usually because of the icons, and fixing them is way easier than most developers think. In this video, I am going to show you 4 different ways to use icons in CSS from simple to professional level. We are going to understand every method, learn when to use each one, and understand how to use icons in your own website in less than 10 minutes. For example, this icon can stretch infinitely without losing quality. We are going to learn about image icons, SVG icons, icon fonts, and even how to build icons using nothing but just CSS. In CSS, there are multiple ways to use icons, but some are clearly better than others. For now, we are going to begin by using icons as image only. You already know how to use an image tag, and we are going to utilize them to build icons. Let's begin by creating an h1, and I'm going to add something like CSS icons. Open it in the browser, and there we have a page. Okay, so wrong port. Let me correct that, and there we go. So what we want to do is to place a checkbox icon here right before this heading. So the simplest method to add an icon is obviously to take an image depicting that icon and use that directly. So let's go to pixabay.com. You should remember it from previous lesson, and I'm going to search for checkbox icon. And this gives me a variety of images. I need to select something which is simple and can fit within our web page. So let's go with that one. And note this checker box, this checker pattern in the background of that image, which means that this image is transparent. And we want to pick a transparent image. So let's download that. I'm going to go with the small version because we want it to be as small as possible to save space. Obviously, an icon is going to be really tiny on a page. Therefore, I am going to pick that, rename it to something simple like checkbox, go back here and create a new folder, and I am going to name that one icons and place my checkbox right here. Let's go back, add an image, and I am going to add src equals to slash icons slash checkbox.png. I am going to add a width of 50 and then a height of auto. There we go. Let's go back, and here we have a icon. It's huge, so I'm going to decrease its size to only 20 pixels, and this looks much nicer. So that works, but there are two issues with using this image. First of all, it's slow. We already use the smallest available image, and it just needs to be 20 pixels wide. And we downloaded, let's check back, we downloaded an image 630 pixels wide. That's over 300 times what we need. However, even though it's only 20 pixels wide here, if I continue to zoom in and then zoom in and then zoom in further, I can't zoom in that much, but I am going to scale the image up to a few thousand pixels, something like 2000, and just look at how this image is getting blurry and pixelated. So those are the main issues that we face while using CSS icons as images. First of all, they're slow. We need to load an image much bigger than necessary. And second, well, it might not be obvious at the first glance, but if we want the icon to be bigger, it's going to get broken and pixelated. So what can we do? We can go to the next method that we're going to learn, which is SVG icons. It's much harder to find SVG icons, but we do have something to help with it. We are going to go there and type svgrepo.com, and here we are going to find thousands of SVG icons that we can use. So let's search for a checkbox, and this is going to give us several options that we can use. I am going to go with this one, and once I click it, in fact, let me go with something like this. There we go. And once I open that, there are multiple options that we can use to download it. And I am going to download that as SVG. And from here, it's almost similar to an image. Let's paste that here. I am going to rename that to checkbox. And we can simply go back and use checkbox.svg in place of checkbox.png. And let's go back, and our icon is here. And that might seem confusing because we just took a PNG image and and replaced it with an SVG image. There shouldn't be a difference, right? So if I go back and right click that SVG file and select Reveal in File Explorer, and I'm going to go back here and select View Details. And if I click that, its size is 933 bytes, which is less than a kilobyte. And if I go here, it's almost, in fact, more than 47 times bigger than a SVG. And the reason for that is a bit complicated, but the thing is, SVG is used to represent simpler images and vectors using just paths. In an SVG, but just tell the computer to draw a straight line, then go down, then go left, and then go up, and then we have a square. And for very simple images with minimal colors, this can be much lighter compared to a PNG. So here we are saving almost 46 kilobytes or decreasing a page size by 47 times by using an SVG in place of a PNG. But there's another benefit. If I go back here and zoom it in and zoom it in fact, let's go back and increase its width to 2000 pixels just like we did previously, and our SVG just disappeared. So let's zoom out a bit and just look at how sharp and how perfect it looks. I'm going to zoom in further and then further, and just look at how crisp it looks. It's not blurry, it's not pixelated, and the reason it appears a bit pixelated is because of the video resolution. You can zoom it in by 1000 times and it's still going to appear perfectly fine. So let's put it back. There we go. And obviously SVGs are the standard when using icons in CSS. And I believe you understand why. Now, in general, you need to use an SVG. Images are only when you need to build something incredibly complex, but for something simple like a square and a checkbox, SVGs always win. But there's another legacy approach that we're going to review, which is called icon fonts. And for now, I'm going to simplify that and just say that, well, we're using a checkbox here. What if we also want to use maybe a hamburger icon and then an actual burger icon and then a pizza icon and so on? If we want to use 300 different icons within a website, loading all those SVGs can feel overwhelming. Therefore, we can reduce the code that we need to perform by using something called an icon font. And obviously, I'm just oversimplifying it. By using a library, you actually need to write less or equal code for using SVGs, not more. For now, I'm just going to oversimplify and go to something called Font Awesome. Not this, just search for Font Awesome. And for now, I'm going to go with this. And here you can find a variety of different files that we have. I am going to go down to version 5, and here I am going to click this to show all files. I am going to scroll down and look for a font file. And there we go. You should remember this from the last lesson. We have a true type font. So we are going to copy that. In fact, I am just going to open and download it. There we go. And I am going to copy that into my project into a new folder called fonts. Let's copy that here, and there we go. So before I go ahead and start implementing that, try to implement the font face yourself. Remember, we did that in the last video. So let's go back here. We need to define a font face. For the font family, I am going to call that fa. And I shall, in fact, let's call that font dash awesome. Let me tell you what font awesome is in a minute. And here I am going to use the URL, which is going to be slash fonts slash fa regular. There we go. And we're ready to use it. And also we need to define its format here like this. There we go. And the next steps are a bit more complicated. So what I am going to do is to define a new class, and here we are going to define font family and the font that we just introduced. I am also going to add some font weight and add something called display inline dash block. There we go. And let's go back here, and I'm going to add something called, let's just add an span tag. I'm going to define its class as fa. And the next step is even more complicated. What I'm going to do is to use the CSS here to find the code that we need to use. So to find that code, let's copy that URL and open it here. And here I am going to search for something called fa-check. And it gives me a few options like fa-check, fa-check circle, fa-check double, and fa-check. Let me try copying it here to find that, and fa-check square, which is exactly what we're looking for. And if you look closely here, you will note that, okay, I lost it again. Let me go back. There we go. And just note this code here. We are going to use that. So what I am going to do is to copy this exact file, this exact class, paste that here. Let me explain that in a moment. And then specify that class here. Let's save, go back, and our icon is here. And you might be confused by now. This was expected. Let me explain this step by step. First of all, we added a new font, and then we introduced a class telling CSS that whenever we use that class, we want to use the font that we just installed. We made it bold just to ensure that it appears correctly. And then here we are defining its content. And basically we're just telling CSS that whenever we put this class on an element, we want to replace its content by this code that I specified here. And all those codes are given to us by this font that we installed here. And we can actually drop all this by removing all this, copying this URL, and then putting it in a link tag here. I don't have to write the tag by myself. I'm going to click here, copy link tag, paste it here, and our class is going to work without having to write all the code by myself. It didn't work for obvious reasons, so what I need to do is to define the .fa class again, define my font family as font awesome, and then define my font weight again, 900. Let's go back, and we're back. But now If I want to use another icon, something like far dash egg, I just need to find an span here or maybe an I tag which is more standard for icons and just define far dash egg, save, and actually we didn't get a egg. So why was that? Let's put this in a div tag just to be sure. Go back, we still don't have a reg. So we're supposed to have a egg here, but we aren't getting that. So I realize that some icons are missing, which is sad, but obviously we're working with years old technology. And this entire section is devoted to something which is deprecated and only used in legacy projects anymore. So there we go. And now we are going to review the final topic, actually the second to last, which is using font awesome. That wraps it up, and it might seem a bit over engineered, but don't worry. In the upcoming videos, we are going to learn how to add those icons without having to write all this code and search for those icons ourselves.